The air in the grand ballroom of the Ansley Golf Club in Atlanta was thick with the scent of gardenias and manufactured success. This wasn't just a family reunion. It was my mother, Loretta Jones's, annual performance art piece where she showcased her perfect life, and by extension, her perfect son. I, Sarah Jones, the family's alleged shame, was just a prop in the background. I was standing near the fruit punch fountain, the only person not dressed in Mother's mandated pastel palette. I wore black, the color of a silent financial funeral. It was Elias, my older brother, the golden son, who started it. He approached me with that familiar, condescending smirk. "Still working for that obscure lab downtown, Sarah? Mom says you should really get a respectable job before you hit 35. You're an embarrassment to the Jones name with that PhD." I just smiled, a small surgical smile that didn't reach my eyes. This was the opening I'd spent 6 months preparing for. "Funny, Elias. Mom told me that exact phrase the day I was born. Said I was the embarrassment who came from a mistake." He chuckled, but I saw the corner of his eye twitch. "Well, you were. Why don't you save us all the trouble and go stand outside? The embarrassment is public enough without you." That was my cue. I looked directly at Elias, then scanned the room. Every family member, from the matriarchs to the distant cousins, was watching our silent exchange. Elias was already inheriting the family's political consulting firm, the one built on the pretense of old Atlanta money. My mother had spent my entire life, 32 years, painting the narrative that I was the mistake, the child of a brief, shameful affair. Elias was the legitimate heir, the son of Daddy Charles. I was the dark spot on their immaculate lineage, the reason we never took professional family photos. I was the child who always had to be reminded of her lesser status, the one who didn't fit, the one whose very existence was a constant low-frequency hum of shame. That narrative was suffocating. It made me a workaholic, a perfectionist, always chasing respect I was told I could never earn because of my blood. So, for years, I tried to earn it. I graduated at the top of my class, earned my doctorate in genetics, and specialized in bioinformatics. I out-earned Elias by the time I was 28, but I never spent the money. I lived frugally, pouring everything into a savings account that represented my personal shield. The truth was, I wasn't saving for retirement. I was saving for the day I could finally buy my own peace. The day I could afford to walk away from their shame and never look back. The narrative of my illegitimacy, the story that my father, Charles, was not my biological father, was the family's oldest secret, their most powerful weapon against me. It kept me compliant, desperate for a sliver of their approval. My mother, sensing the tension and seeing me standing up to Elias, floated over, her face a mask of practiced concern. "Serafina, darling, you know your brother is just looking out for you. He knows what people say. Your very presence here is challenging. Please try to look more grateful to be included." She said it with a smile, loud enough for Aunt Vivian, the biggest gossip to hear. She was delivering the final public blow, securing her narrative of the selfless, suffering mother. But I was ready. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper that still carried. "I am grateful, Mom. Genuinely. Because if I hadn't been standing here as your embarrassment, I never would have known the truth." I paused, letting the silence grow heavy. If you've ever felt like the odd one out, the shame of your family, hit that like button right now and tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one because what you're about to hear is for every person who was ever told they didn't belong. My journey didn't start with revenge. It started with a quiet desperation for truth. The constant whispers that I wasn't really a Jones, that I was Mabel's mistake, planted a toxic seed. After my last promotion at the genetics lab, a promotion Elias publicly dismissed as diversity hire, I decided to use my skills for one private, non-professional task: confirm my own parentage. I ordered a professional, encrypted DNA kit. I told my mother and Elias it was for a genealogy project I was doing for work. They both gave me a cheek swab instantly. Elias, ever the narcissist, wanted to see his perfect lineage. Mother, ever the controlling one, wanted to make sure I wasn't going to accidentally contact my supposed biological father. The results came back quickly. My mother's story was half true. Charles, the man I called Daddy, was not my biological father. The relief was surprisingly intense. It validated the internal feeling of not belonging. The search led me to a man named David Ramsey. He was a kind, quiet man who lived out in the suburbs of Savannah and was, ironically, the family member my mother always dismissed as a drifter, the man who she said was the father of her short-lived, shameful affair 20 years prior. I found David's contact and prepared to meet him. But before I did, my professional curiosity kicked in. I ran David's DNA against Elias's. The results were inconclusive, just distant cousins. But then I noticed something deeply disturbing in the raw data from my mother's side of the family. The Joneses' family tree was not what it seemed. The true breakthrough came when I cross-referenced the genetic markers with public real estate records. Our family's crown jewel, the very Ansley Golf Club home where the reunion was held, was purchased 30 years ago, not by my supposed father, Charles, but by a legal entity called the Ramsey Family Trust. The David Ramsey I thought was my biological father turned out to be the trustee, a relative, yes, but not the father. My biological father was David's older brother, Michael Ramsey, a successful international banker who died tragically in a plane crash 32 years ago, just 2 months before I was born. Michael was a kind, wealthy man who was already married and estranged from my mother. The affair was real, but my mother, Loretta, hadn't just conceived me. She had conceived a plan. Michael, feeling responsible, had established the Ramsey Family Trust in my name, Serafina Ramsey, stipulating that the Atlanta home would be held in trust for me, the sole beneficiary, upon my 30th birthday. My mother, Loretta, had legally changed my birth certificate, giving me the Jones surname, and created the narrative of my illegitimacy and her shame. Why? To access the trust's funds before my 30th birthday, and to keep me off the scent of my true inheritance. She needed the court to believe that the Ramsey Family Trust had no living Ramsey heirs, which would happen if Serafina Ramsey was believed to be an unacknowledged mistake. But the biggest revelation was yet to come. The analysis of the property deed showed that the house was, in fact, owned by the trust. The transfer of the deed to the Loretta and Elias Jones family firm that happened 2 years ago, it was fraudulent. A signature forged by Elias. My mother and brother had been living off and slowly liquidating my inheritance. They didn't just steal my money. They stole my identity and weaponized my own existence to do it. It wasn't about shame. It was about greed. And the ultimate proof lay not in a court document, but in the single other DNA result I ran. The music had stopped. My mother's face was frozen in a smile, but her eyes held a spark of terror. She knew my quiet tone meant danger. She quickly grabbed Elias's arm, tugging him towards the podium for the annual State of the Family address, hoping to bury my comment under the velvet curtain of ceremony. "Come on, Elias. Time for your speech." I didn't move. I took a deliberate sip of the fruit punch. It tasted like sweet victory. "Before Elias gives his speech on the future of the Jones family legacy," I said, my voice projecting naturally, amplified by the silent attention of every person in the room, "I think we need to talk about the true legacy." My mother's smile finally cracked. "Serafina, not now. This is a sacred event." "Sacred? Or staged?" I countered. I reached into my small black clutch and pulled out not a single piece of paper, but my phone, displaying a high-resolution certified document. "You said I embarrassed you, Mom. You said my existence was a mistake. But what is truly embarrassing is a lifetime of lies built on simple theft." I started with the document. "This, everyone, is the deed for the house you're standing in right now. It was transferred 2 years ago to the Elias Jones family firm, correct? A lovely piece of work, Elias. Very neat signature." Elias, who had been smug moments ago, was now visibly sweating. His eyes darted nervously between my mother and the exit. "It's all perfectly legal, Sarah," he stammered. "Dad signed the transfer." "He did," I agreed calmly, "but he didn't own it. The house, this entire estate, has been owned for 32 years by the Ramsey Family Trust, a trust that states I, Serafina Ramsey, am the sole irrevocable beneficiary." The room erupted in gasps. The aunts and uncles, who had always believed my mother's story of woe, were whispering furiously. "Ramsey! Who is Ramsey?" they demanded. My mother shrieked. A high, desperate sound. She's lying. Charles left it to me. She's trying to steal it. She is just trying to embarrass us. This was the moment of the core confrontation, the final prepared strike. I held up my phone again, this time displaying the DNA results I'd run weeks ago. I looked directly at Elias, my face void of emotion. Steal it? No. I'm just taking what's mine. You see, when I ran my DNA against the family, I found something far more interesting than my own biological father. I paused for a long, agonizing moment, letting Elias sink under the weight of his own panic. The results confirmed that I am not the biological child of Charles Jones, which everyone here already knew. But they also confirmed that Elias Jones, the golden son, is not the biological child of Loretta Jones. The air went out of the room. Loretta looked like a statue carved from ice. Elias swayed, catching himself on the edge of the podium. I continued, my voice steady and cold. Elias's true mother is a woman named Carla. Carla, Mom's late younger sister. The one who died tragically 35 years ago, 2 days after giving birth. Carla entrusted her newborn son, Elias, to her loving older sister, Loretta. Only, Loretta was pregnant with me at the time, by Michael Ramsey. She saw a way out. She had 2 babies, one legitimate by blood but not by parentage, Elias, and one legitimate by parentage but not by her chosen lineage, me. She claimed Elias as her own, elevating him to the position of perfect son, giving him the Jones name, and simultaneously painting me as the shameful mistake child of an affair. Why? Because the Ramsey family trust named Serafina Ramsey, not Jones, the sole beneficiary. By convincing the family and eventually the court that I was an illegitimate Jones with no real connection to the Ramsey name, she kept me quiet while raising Elias to believe he was the perfect Jones heir. The stunned silence that followed my revelation was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. Elias, pale and bewildered, finally found his voice, not with anger, but with a defeated whisper. Carla. Aunt Carla was my mother. Loretta finally collapsed into the closest armchair, sobbing, her meticulously constructed world crumbling around her. She didn't deny it. The shame wasn't mine anymore. It was hers. All the years of calling me an embarrassment, all the manipulation, all the emotional and financial theft, was to protect a lie about Elias's lineage and to steal my inheritance. I had the house. I had the complete financial control of the Ramsey Trust, including the substantial investments Michael Ramsey had left me. I had the legal right to press charges for forgery and financial fraud against both Elias and Loretta. But I didn't want a prison sentence for them. I wanted something more creative, something that served justice and created a new kind of future. Not just for me, but for the man who was unjustly labeled my illegitimate father for 3 decades. I walked over to the sound system and retrieved a microphone, turning to the entire family. The Jones family legacy, built on lies and stolen assets, ends today. Elias and Loretta will face the legal consequences of their actions, but that will be handled privately, not here. I looked across the room to David Ramsey, the kind, quiet man my mother had labeled a drifter, and my supposed mistake father, who was actually my first cousin, acting as my trustee. He was standing near the door, having arrived just minutes before the confrontation. He was the one who had quietly facilitated my real father's wishes, ensuring the trust remained active despite Loretta's attempts to dissolve it. He was the one who had kept the truth of my identity safe. I approached him, the man who had suffered the most damage to his reputation because of my mother's greed. David, I said, my voice cracking slightly for the first time. This house was meant to be my fresh start. But my fresh start isn't about property. It's about peace, and finally finding my true family. I held out the official deed papers I had executed that morning, legally transferring ownership. This house is now yours, and your family's. You suffered 30 years of public shame and slander so that my mother could steal from me. This is not a gift. It is a small act of restoration for the dignity you lost. I forgive you for all the years you kept the secret to honor my father's wishes. Now take your home. David Ramsey didn't cry. He didn't cheer. He just took the deed, looked at it, and then looked at me, a daughter of his family finally home. He gave me the only kind of acceptance I'd ever truly needed, a silent nod. I turned back to the room where Loretta and Elias watched, realizing they were not only homeless and disinherited, but also publicly shamed by a truth that exonerated the person they had targeted. I left the microphone on the stand, the sound of the ballroom's silent horror ringing in my ears. I walked out of that house and out of that family structure forever. The vindication was complete. I walked into the Atlanta sunlight, feeling the weight of a borrowed, toxic life lift from my shoulders. The change was profound. I didn't just win a house. I gained the profound self-respect that comes from choosing truth over tradition, and I built a new foundation with the only person who had proven loyal. I never saw Elias or Loretta again. I live in peace now, with a new purpose and a new family who values honesty. But that peace cost me everything. And yet, it was worth every single penny. I would never be their embarrassment again. I'm Serafina Ramsey, and I found out who I was by proving who they weren't. If you were in my shoes, what is the first thing you would have done when you walked out the front door of that reunion? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any story about the truth coming to light.